Okay, good morning. This meeting of the High-Speed Rail Authority Board will come to order, and I will ask the Secretary to please call the roll.
Director Schenk.
Here.
Vice Chair Richards.
Here.
Director Rossi.
Here.
Director Correa.
Here.
Director Curtin.
Here.
Director Paskett is absent. Director Lowenthal. Here. Chair Richard.
Here. Vice Chair Richards, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we proceed into the public comment section this morning, I have just a brief announcement relevant to the program, which is that we were informed this morning that in the litigation involving our use of the state bonds, the TOS case, that Judge Kenney denied the petition of the plaintiffs, ruled in favor of the authority on key issues. So I don't have anything further to say on that until we actually analyze the decision. But obviously, anything like this is always welcome because we are really gaining momentum in this program. We're moving forward with the construction, and I think as people will hear today with our new draft business plan, laying out how we recommend that the system can actually come into operation in a reasonable time frame. And so certainly it's a welcome development. I think the other thing too that I just want to emphasize, it's something that I've noted recently, is that there's been this myth out there that has grown up that somehow the High-Speed Rail Authority, because of the adoption of the blended approach or whatever, is somehow not building the system that the public voted for in the ballot measure. And I have to say, this is a great myth, and it's totally and completely false. What we are building is exactly what the public voted for, a fully electric 200-plus mile-per-hour train that can operate without a subsidy, that is designed to achieve nonstop speeds of 2 hours, 40 minutes between our great cities of Los Angeles and San Francisco. That's always been our goal, and we have never wavered from fidelity to the Bond Act. So how this has kind of come into the public discourse, well, that's just politics. But up here, we know that what we're building is precisely consistent with the Bond Act, and that's what's going to be delivered to the public, and that's what we will continue to do. So anyway, it's a welcome development for us, but as always, we take a pause to note that and then get back to the business of building this program. So I wanted to make sure that my colleagues had heard that that ruling had come down this morning. With that, we will turn to public comment, and as we always do, we start with elected officials first, and then take comments in the order in which they were received. And my glasses are here somewhere, excuse me. So we will start with Wasim Ahmed, Mayor of the City of Chowchilla, followed by Brian Maddox from the City of Chowchilla. Mr. Mayor? Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman and members of the authority. My name is Wasim Ahmed, and I'm the current Mayor of the City of Chowchilla. The City of Chowchilla Council voted unanimously in support of the location of a heavy maintenance facility within the County of Madera. The City of Chowchilla is in a unique position, as we all know, of accommodating the why, whereas nowhere else in the state other than the Chowchilla does the north-south alignment meet the east-west alignment. The City of Chowchilla supports the construction of high-speed rail along Avenue 21 and Road 13 in accordance with Resolution number 8115, which already has been provided to the authority before. and been submitted. It is estimated that the high-speed maintenance facility will create 20,000 jobs annually for the next 5 years and will create 1,500 jobs when the facility is complete. The city of Chowchilla would welcome increased employment opportunities, as we all know, as it being a disadvantaged community, with better paying jobs and an enhancement of professional opportunities. We always welcome those. So having said that, I would greatly appreciate for the time and opportunity. Thank you.
Mayor, thank you for coming a long way to address us this morning. We appreciate that, and that of your colleagues. Mr. Maddox?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Brian Taddix. I'm the city administrator with the city of Chowchilla.
Can I just stop you and apologize for mispronouncing your name? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
I didn't read it correctly. Excuse
There are
me.
many other different ways to pronounce my name. That one's relatively benign. But I just would like to tell all of you that echo the concerns of my mayor and my council. Madera County is a wonderful county, but it does suffer from chronic unemployment. And yet we also sit at this geographic location right in the center of the new phase that would connect Kern County up to San Jose. And we also sit right at the spot where Highway 152 from the Bay Area intersects with 99. It all comes together in Chowchilla. Excellent location in our county for a high-speed rail maintenance facility. But as we do so, just encourage you to keep in mind the quality of life and impacts in Chowchilla as we grow jobs, because that's the three key words we have in Chowchilla: jobs, jobs, and jobs. As we grow jobs, both in Fairmead, which is part of our sphere of influence, and Chowchilla, because right between the two sits our industrial park. So as we look at alternatives, I encourage you to protect that industrial park, the job creation generator, and then look at overall at the benefits of a heavy maintenance facility. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haddix. Supervisor Max Rodriguez from Madera County, Chair of the Board of Supervisors, I believe, and followed by Supervisor Brett Frazier from Madera County. Supervisor, welcome. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the authority. My name is Max Rodriguez. I'm a supervisor for Madera County. I am here with a delegation of Madera County. We may not have perfect attendance at these hearings, but we're listening, and we're with you guys all the way. And I know there's a lot of pressure on things that are happening. I've been a friend of high-speed rail from the beginning. I've taken a lot of criticism, Madera County, but you know what? I think I'm right. I think this system's going to be built, and it's going to be something that we can all be proud of. It's a beautiful site. There in Madera, which is the birth of the high-speed rail, that's what I call it, they've got some structures up. Folks, it's very impressive, very impressive. And the people around there as they drive through 145, there's underpass there, they see that and they marvel. And I've gotten comments, I said, well, it's going to get done. And that's what we hope for. Madera County has, as a previous speaker said, we have really high unemployment. We have ag, which has done real well, but the other sector in Madera County are really suffering. Hopefully with the system coming in and the cluster that's going to be built around it, things will really happen. And I hope so, because we need a stimulus there. And Fresno's doing well, Bakersfield doing well. They have oil. Fresno's got a lot of companies working there, but we're suffering. So we ask that you can take that into consideration when you make that decision to build high-speed rail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Frazier.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board. As you can tell, Madera County has come a long way in the last few years from, sometimes being adversarial to now we're up here trying to be good long-term partners with the high-speed rail, looking at alternative sites. And, I just wanted to point out, Madera County is the birthplace and backbone of the high-speed rail. It's where it's all starting. It's right there as close to the south of the Y as possible, which was a big part of where you'd want your heavy maintenance facility. And, you know, we talked about 3 words, and I just want you to leave with these 3 words when you think of Madera County in terms of the heavy maintenance facility: cheaper, faster, and smarter. We have single owner properties that are ready to do it, right on the alignment with all the necessary infrastructure in place. Some of them are by right able to accommodate industrial right now. So cheaper, faster, smarter. Just remember that when you think of it. We're a regional location, pull from both Merced and Fresno counties, as well as Madera County. If you place the heavy maintenance facility, if you want to see a needle move, you'll see it in Madera County. You'll see actual change. And I think that's something that the authority can go out and say, look at what we've done. We've changed the community overnight. And to have that as a feather to put in your cap, I think would be a great thing. And remember, cheaper, faster, smarter. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Supervisor. Councilman Andy Medellin, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from City of Madera.
Good evening, or good morning, folks. It's actually Andy Medellin, and he was unfortunately detained. I have a short statement on his behalf, if you would indulge me.
That's fine.
Written by him, I can assure you. But the new business plan, which places Madera in the most central location, is something that's important. It's 130 miles away from San Jose and 130 miles away from Bakersfield. You know, not only we are the heart of the high-speed rail, we're the heart of California. So I don't think it's any mistake that, you know, what is also known as the spaghetti bowl, or the Y, comes together there. It's a natural fit. And so, you know, we would just like to echo the City of Madera has lots of thoughts and ideas about how it can be accommodated, working as partners. The 2 cities in the county have come together and are pooling resources together to make this happen. And like Supervisor Frazier said, this is really a regional facility. Madera could pull from the Merced, Mariposa, Fresno labor markets quite easily. Those are other communities in need. So we basically think that our proposed sites meet every criteria that we've known so far, and we're very happy that you have us here today, and we're very happy to have Madera County be the birthplace of your system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Appreciate that. So that concludes comments from elected officials. Thank you. Turning now to general public comment, taking again the speakers in order. We first have Michael Turnipseed from the Kern Taxpayers Association, followed by Richard Chapman from Kern Economic Development Corporation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Michael Turnipseed, representing the Kern County Taxpayers Association. I'm here to do 2 things. First of all, introduce myself to the authority, and second of all, I express our support for the efforts of the Coalition Kern for Heavy Maintenance Facility. We are one of the charter organizers of the group, and we're here just to make sure that we try to be in the game too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman, I see you have 2 speaker cards, but I think this will be your slot, if that's okay.
Apologize for being redundant.
No, that's all
I'll
right.
keep my remarks in check.
No
Chairman Richard and members of the board, good morning. My name is Richard Chapman. I'm the president and CEO of the Kern Economic Development Corporation. In a brief nutshell, I have 20 years in economic development experience, about 10 years in Seattle. I worked on the team with Sound Transit's a commuter and light rail link, helping to bring Talgo in, train set manufacturer. In Kern County, almost 10 years. Believe we have an amazing story to tell, and it's evident in our motto, take a closer look. And I would urge you to take a closer look at Kern County and the story there. And I'll let the facts speak for themselves. What we do is use a lot of quantitative information around the country, ranking Kern County. Several of the rankings that we're very proud of: fastest growing economy in the country since 2001. Look back over that 15-year period, almost 10% annualized GDP growth. Number 2 in millennial job and population growth in the U.S. Again, we compare ourselves to cities around the country, not just in California. And also number 4 in STEM rankings, according to Brookings Institution. So we have Brookings Institution, Bloomberg, and Bureau of Economic Analysis. These are where we derive our rankings from. And then number 9, according to Forbes, for engineering jobs per capita. All this, I believe, is in the wheelhouse for the heavy maintenance facility. Recently, this is a California ranking, that, however, we were the top place in California in terms of cost competitiveness. We talk about workforce quality as well as availability where they come together. So we always use the term quality. You're going to get good quality workforce. Obviously, with oil prices pretty low, there's a significant amount of workers available to plug into these facilities. And so we really do think, as we, in addition to our Take a Closer Look model, we also use the best investment a business can make. And we believe the authority behooves the authority to look at Kern County and to meet your expectations for this facility. Another point I want to put out there is that we are commissioning through our foundation with the Institute for Applied Economics, LAEDC, a study to measure the economic benefits of such a facility in our county. So we're very pleased to be here today, as well as part of the HMF Coalition, Kern HMF for HMF Coalition, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Kevin Bush, Kern County Black Chamber of Commerce, followed by Lauren Skidmore of Kern for HMF.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning. My name is Kevin Bush. I'm on the board of the Kern County Black Chamber of Commerce. And for the record, the Chamber is in support of high-speed rail. Also, the Chamber is in support of all efforts to bring the heavy maintenance facility and all the economic benefits of job creation and business development to Kern County. And then in closing, I'd like to say 3 things for you when you think about Kern County as well is cheaper, faster, smarter.
Thank you,
This
Mr.
could get
Bush.
interesting.
Ms. Skidmore, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Richard and Authority Board members. My name is Lauren Skidmore, and I am chair of the coalition that you've been hearing about from some of my partners, Kern for HMF. We are a coalition based in Kern County, made up of local business leaders, schools, government entities, and individuals. Supervisor Mick Gleason asked me to send his apologies for not being able to be here today. He has a very important vote related to our local library system in Kern County that he had to be at. I have other Kern for HMF partners with me today, as you have met. Most of them were not able to attend last month. As well, we have representatives from the cities of Shafter and Wasco. Our coalition believes the new business plan is focused on cost savings and efficiency, and your focus is also on reducing the schedule. Our sites in Kern County can do both of those things, save you time and money. As well, we're extremely proud that our sites host no to minimal environmental issues. Lastly, Supervisor Gleason and our coalition would like to invite you to hold a meeting in Bakersfield or Kern County, and we welcome any of you individually at any time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Skidmore. If you could pass on to the supervisor our best wishes and tell him I actually thought his airplane was back in the shop, so that was, thank you. Okay, I think those are the comments from various people on the, well, no, I'm sure they're not. I'm sure we have at least one more on heavy maintenance facility issues, so I'll hold my comment on that. Next is Roland LeBron, followed by Ted Hart.
Good morning, Chair Richard and members, and thank you for reaching out earlier. I really appreciate that. The first thing I'd like to say with regards to earlier remarks is really unfortunate when the own chief executive is quoted in the press as saying that the authority is transitioning from providing a high-speed connection between LA and San Francisco. That's unfortunate. But the real reason I'm here is to share some earlier some concerns with what we know of the draft business plan so far. The first one is Monterey Highway, which is my backyard, and the second one, serious issues with proposed tunnel designs. The proposal right now is to pretty much build a $1.4 billion 20-mile viaduct between South San Jose and Gilroy. It doesn't make any sense, because if you look at the Monterey Highway alignment, it's all built up, which means you got the 125-mile-an-hour speed limit, and then you're going to hit something called Tulare Hill, which is a sharp bend around a hill that you can't possibly touch. So the question is, why are we having a 60-foot viaduct that basically goes over every single overpass over there? The second thing I want to talk about, which I'm extremely concerned about, is the so-called value engineering for the Pacheco Pass tunnels. And the proposal is to reduce the tunnel diameters and eliminate the tunnel ventilation. And that is really remarkable, because the only way that you're going to be able to save lives if there is an incident in the tunnel is with tunnel ventilation. And the issue that you have is, let's just suppose worst comes to worst and you do have an incident and you have fatalities and you do want to add tunnel ventilation later. The equipment interferes with the airflow in the tunnel, which means that eventually you're going to have to increase the diameter of the tunnels. That needs to be looked at. But in closing, with all due respect to the members of this board, my recommendation moving forward is that next time you have vacancies, is you follow the example that Mr. Rossi started with administration and finance. Start looking at engineering and consider appointing civil engineers to the board who have got this kind of expertise, who basically are going to stop this thing like right there before it gets anywhere near a business plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. LeBrun. Ted Hart, followed by Robert Allen.
Good morning. The 2016 draft business plan does not contain one word concerning the need for security to prevent a terrorist attack on the high-speed rail system. How could this have been overlooked with the threat and execution of bombings, murder, mass destruction, a 24/7 worldwide reality? Security is not something that high-speed rail can ignore if it expects passengers to actually ride its trains. It must be part of the business plan. Why was the security plan left out? Possible reasons: it would be impossible to execute a security plan given the conditions necessary to adequately protect all travel passengers. 2, the cost would be prohibitive. 3, it would reduce ridership because of increased wait times at train stations. Imagine the terrorists' eyes lighting up when they see a beautiful, shiny blue and gold bullet train flying down the rail at 200 miles an hour. It's a dream target for them. What a spectacular way to kill hundreds of infidel and obtain worldwide attention for their jihadist goals. The methods for attacking a train are endless. Start at the stations. Preventing a terrorist attack should include the same system as the one we have in place for our airports. Rail passengers are in a highly vulnerable position given all the small stations on the line with passengers boarding and leaving with suitcases in hand. The authority needs to explain how they're going to protect 800 miles of open track. Imaginations can run wild with various methods that can potentially use to derail or blow up a train. Any type of fencing is useless because of drones and ultralight aircraft. All road crossings are open. Keep in mind that people have been blowing up trains since the first ones made it out onto the tracks. And blowing up trains was perfected in World War II. Since there isn't a security plan, there isn't any way to make a cost analysis. The first terrorist created high-speed train wreck would potentially end the demand for high-speed rail travel in the U.S. for the simple reason that fear would drive people to make the choice to fly or drive. Of course, planes are vulnerable, but so far they have a great safety record. It's hard for the bad guys to attack a plane once it's in the air, whereas a train is exposed the entire trip. Fear is a great motivating factor, and people who fear a terrorist attack are not going to buy tickets on the high-speed rail. The High-Speed Rail Authority must address these serious security issues, and I look forward to the response in the final 2016 plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Next is Robert Allen.
I never thought that we would see a train uprooted by a tree. A tree uprooted in the rain was all it took to stop that train.
Yeah.
They tell us now it was just a slide. The train was slow, but no one died. I think you're on the right track. Your 2016 business plan is far better than plans of previous years. However, it does miss the important role of another state agency, the California Public Utilities Commission. CPUC has safety oversight responsibility over railroad operations. Yet I find no mention of the CPUC's role in safety. Indeed, it's until we get to the note at the bottom of page 93 that we even see the CPUC mentioned. You ignore their PUC at your peril. They are fierce, even overbearing at times, in pursuing safety issues. Let me cite an example with a publicly owned railroad like yours. In January of 1979, a third rail power pickup paddle on the BART train broke, sending a high voltage power surge that set the train on fire. The PUC ordered BART to, no, let me get it. My notes are missing here. I have the
Bob, let me help you out with this.
Huh?
Let me help you out with this. What you were going to tell us is that a firefighter died in the ensuing fire, and the PUC shut down BART for many months after that.
Yes, for over 3 months, the PUC ordered BART to keep that transbay tube closed. Even though I've worked for 3 different railroads, which are all part of the Union Pacific now. It was a freak. Any of those railroads, after such a freak incident, would have repaired the damage and continued operations. PUC here ordered the BART to keep the transbay tube closed, causing chaos in the Bay Area commute for well over 3 months. Nobody would deny that the changes were needed, but the regional havoc was a stiff price to pay. You plan blended rail operating on Caltrain tracks that now have a maximum speed of 79 miles an hour. You and Caltrain talk of raising that speed to 110 miles an hour or more and running your trains at close to the maximum speed. Bourbonnais is a good example of a train at 79 miles an hour hitting a truck loaded with steel. 2 Amtrak locomotives and 11 of 13 cars derailed, with many deaths and injuries. Had the train been going faster, the toll would have been much higher, or the truck could have been loaded with gasoline or chlorine tanker, or could have been loaded with explosives. Trains are vulnerable to accidents, suicide, sabotage, and even terrorism at grade crossings. Demand grade crossings. Demand grade separation of roads that cross your tracks where you operate. PUC will likely demand it. One thought regarding the PUC: operate your trains only south of San Jose. Let the Caltrain either pilot the equipment or run the equipment north of San Jose as a Caltrain train. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Next speaker is Diane Lacombe, followed by Paul Guerrero.
Good morning, Chairman Richards, board members, and CEO Morales. I have two items I want to discuss with you today. One is the Authority Business Council. You have new staff people with the council. They seem very nice and I'm sure very capable in their respective fields. However, they seem to be lacking in skills and experience dealing with small, minority, and women-owned businesses. They seem to lack experience with the state regulations and the Code of Federal regulations as well, the CFRs. And the CFRs dealing with civil rights relative to small business participation. I don't know why, but the experts that you had, Olivia Fonseca and Pat Padilla, are no longer working with the council. I don't know why, but to my opinion, the Small Business Council would not be, the whole program, small business program, would not be where it is if it weren't for them. And I'm sure there's an explanation for all of this. I would have hoped that we had the experience and skills of people hitting the road running, because we have to meet a high goal, and experience with small businesses is extremely important. The second item, in reviewing your extension to CP1, I didn't see the 30% small business goal on it. Maybe it was just my oversight, but I'm assuming that 30% is going with the with the extension.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
We'll confirm that when we get to that point, Ms. Lacombe, but yeah. Mr. Guerrero, followed by our last speaker.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Oh, yes.
And also confirm that the veterans can continue to get their set-asides as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll address that. Okay. We'll pass these down, Mr. Guerrero.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you will recall, about a year ago, I passed out something similar to this and said this was what the Department of General Services was working on, and it would be coming. And this is the final draft of it, and in fact, this is on the website now, and you'll notice that the high-speed rail is in the red as far as meeting the small business goal, the state small business goal. You're at around 20%. It's very hard to read. If you get real close, you can find that 20% down there. And of course, the state's goal is 25%. Right now, the high-speed rail has established a 30% small business goal, of which 10% is disabled, 3% is disabled veteran and 10% is minority business. And that has worked well, and the staff has met that, and we've been really proud of the high-speed rail for being a leader out there. But times have changed now, and we're noting that Caltrans, who's just above you, is in the green. That means it's meeting a 25% small business goal, it's meeting a 10% disadvantaged business goal, and it's meeting a 3% disabled veterans goal. So Caltrans is around 38%. To that end, I would suggest that the high-speed rail examine the possibility of raising its goal from 30 to 40%. So it can meet all these goals and give staff the tools to work with. What the state's procedure will be following the announcement of where you're at will be to take your small business advocates and attempt to train them so they can meet the goal. And I don't think they need training. I think they're doing the best they can with the tools the board has given them. And following the training, and which will include movies and workshops and so forth, they'll be asking the agency that met the goal to mentor the agencies that didn't meet the goal. And I don't think the high-speed rail needs mentoring. I think it just needs a tool to give your staff the tools. I don't think your staff needs training to meet the goal. I don't think they need mentoring to meet the goal. I think they simply need to have you guys raise the goal from 30 to 40% to give them the tools to work with. And I would submit that you take a look at that and see what you can do. The other thing I want to say is I understand your next meeting will be in San Jose. You're coming to the big city.
and we'll be there to welcome you. The other thing we'll be looking at is as you start your planning for the route through San Jose, one of the things that's part of the earliest stages of planning is the environmental justice study. And we'll be looking for what comes out of that in San Jose. And so welcome you there. I hope you have a meeting place. You haven't announced where you're going to be meeting at, Supervisor's Chambers or the City Hall, but we'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Just for the public, I think our next meeting is in Anaheim, followed by a meeting in San Jose. Right. Same month, correct. Leanne Eager, here to support Bakersfield and Madera's high-speed rail heavy maintenance facility application.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I know you think I'm going to talk about the maintenance facility, but I'm not. I'm not. I don't think I need to. Actually, I'm excited to see the folks from Madera County here and the folks from Kern County, and I'm hoping there's some folks here from other Central Valley communities, because I think the most important thing that we're here for is to support the efforts of connecting the valley to other parts of the state of California. And one way to do that, and I'm glad you're all here to hear this, because one way to do that is to actually be at the table when these discussions are happening, when decisions are happening. One of the things that happened in Fresno County recently is I was out working with farmers out in the community, and I had a group of farmers that asked me, is there some way that they could build an overpass that doesn't go diagonally through my property, that goes along a current line? 2 miles down the road, I had another large farming entity that said, we don't really need this overpass here because no one goes on this road. Is there some way to take that overpass off and move it down farther? So I took that information back to the High-Speed Rail Authority staff, Diana and her staff, and they said, we would support that. It would actually save us money if we did that, but go to the county and see what they think, because they voted on this a couple of years ago. So I took that information to the county. They did a traffic study. They sent me back out to talk to every farmer in that entire community to get their opinion on that. We brought it back to the Board of Supervisors last month, and those changes were made. Those changes saved hundreds and hundreds of acres of farmland, and that's because we all sat at the table together. And one of the things that we all know in the Central Valley is that we always have to say, how about us, how about us, how about us, because things happen on either side of that. And we know that if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. So I just implore all of you to please sit at that table, and I think you all know that Fresno County has been at that table every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eager. Very nice. Before we go to the regular agenda, after listening to the speakers this morning, I'm tempted to ask the staff and the Finance and Audit Committee what the impact on our budget would be if we had 5 heavy maintenance facilities so that we could distribute them around the valley. Mike says it would reduce the cost. Okay, good. We'll pursue that. Thank you all, especially for coming long distances to speak to us this morning. That concludes the public comment segment. We'll now move to the regular agenda, and the first item will be consideration of approval of the board meetings from the February 16th meeting. Do I have a motion on that?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Vice Chair Richards, second by Director Schenck. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Schenck?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Rossi? Director Correa?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Lowenthal?
Yes.
Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, item 2, the consideration of an updated sustainability policy. Ms. Cederoth, good morning.
Good morning, Chair Richard, Vice Chair Richards, members of the board, and CEO Morales. Thank you for the opportunity to review some of the activities to date around sustainability and to provide you with some information on issues we'd like to update and to prepare this policy for adoption by the board. As you can see, the This is an overview of actions that all fall under the umbrella of sustainability as defined by the authority. The authority consulted with its peer rail organizations globally and has defined sustainability as the consideration of environmental, social, and financial impacts for both current and future generations across all aspects of the organization and every element of the project lifecycle. These actions address policy objectives across several important areas for California, including benefits to disadvantaged communities and implementation of key California regulations. As you can see, none are perhaps more robustly addressed than in the category of sustainable infrastructure. I'd like to go through a few more details to, and I realize it's behind you, so
it's okay.
Perhaps a little difficult to see, but I'd like to go through a few more details on how, in addressing sustainable infrastructure, the California High-Speed Rail Authority is setting a new standard for the delivery of infrastructure in California. So this is a very long list of numbers, and it's a wide array of metrics. But the story that it tells you is that the program we're delivering is the most sustainable infrastructure project in California, if not the United States. We've had several successes in delivering the project. Let's start with up at the top, you see the demolition of the Tuolumne Bridge. And to date, as we've heard, we do have 266 small businesses already under contract. 94 of those businesses are in disadvantaged communities. And one of those small businesses is performing all of the demolition work for CP1. They added employees to carry this out, and the success so far has been tremendous. In fact, it's unprecedented in the state of California. We've achieved a 99% recycling rate. That's 100% of all the concrete and steel, and 92% of the rest of the construction waste. That's avoiding 45,000 tons from Fresno's landfills. We're avoiding those tipping fees. This is really unique among California infrastructure projects. It's not just in that area we're seeing success. The requirement for the contractor to use Tier 4 or as clean as Tier 4 equipment means that we have the cleanest fleet available in the United States. As Jared Blumenfeld pointed out, the EPA's regional administrator for the Pacific Southwest pointed out when we unveiled the Tier 4 cranes in Fresno a few months ago, the construction of this first in the nation high-speed rail will bring air quality benefits to the residents of the San Joaquin Valley. And by using clean diesel equipment engines during the construction phase, emissions of soot and nitrogen oxides are reduced up to 95% compared to older models. We've compared the fleet we have on site with a California standard fleet, which is a little bit cleaner, and the results are quite powerful in terms of the avoidance of criteria pollutants. So we've seen a 49% reduction in oxides of nitrogen and reactive organic gases, which are ozone precursors. We know those have effects on human health, both workers as well as in the air basin. And in terms of particulate matter, by reducing particulate matter, by having cleaner engines, we're also avoiding black carbon, which is a powerful, short-lived climate pollutant, which California is aggressively tackling. We have, of course, combusted fuel in these engines, which means we have emitted some criteria pollutants, about 3 tons. But through our agreement with the San Joaquin Air District, we've already, after 1 year, actually after 90 days, the Air District has offset 26 tons of criteria pollutants. So we've already offset all of the criteria air pollutants associated with the construction of Construction Package 1. This is being carried out by about 200 or more skilled laborers. We're bringing jobs to the Central Valley, which, as we've heard, are of strong interest to the communities in this area. These workers are delivering the transformative project for California. Our ridership model carried out for the update to the business plan has showed us that we should be reducing at least 176,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent in the first year of operation, which means that by 2030, we'll have reduced about 2.5 million metric tons of carbon. This is contributing to achieving California's climate goals in that time frame. So the project will use concrete and steel and to achieve a very durable, reliable, and easy to maintain system. What we are directed to consider in Executive Order B 3015 and what the board has asked us to look at in more detail in the policy update are ways of selecting materials to improve the environmental quality of those materials across that life cycle. Now, to date, we know, because we've required the contractor to report this, that the concrete going into the structure so far has 25% fly ash. That is a waste product from the combustion of coal to produce energy. And by using this, we're achieving the durability we need for the system and also avoiding carbon dioxide emissions. We also know, thanks to the requirement to have environmental product declarations for our concrete and steel, that in August, we used around 300 tons of 100% recycled steel. What's even more interesting about that steel is that the information about that steel showed us that the global warming potential of that steel used was 50% lower than an industry average. So already we find that we're using some very quality, very green materials, and the direction of the board, of course, is to explore further measures to improve that. Of course.
Rossi?
How do you know that? What's the math?
What is the math on that?
I mean, how do you, I mean, I understood what you said. That's a conclusion. How do you get to the conclusion? How do we know that that utilization of that material is in fact a 50% reduction? I mean, when you look at all of those numbers, they're interesting, but in order to understand whether or not we are in fact achieving those ends, you need to understand the front end of the equation.
Yes.
And so I'm just wondering, if you have that data, I'd just like to see it. You don't have to take me through it here, but I'd like to see the data.
Yes.
I'd like to understand how that works, and I'd like to understand how the projections work.
Yes.
To get to the numbers.
Yes, we do have that data, and I'd be more than happy to kind of walk you through those numbers in detail. It might be a little bit more than we want to go into at the moment, but yeah.
Why don't you follow up with Director Rossi on that? That sounds great.
Yes, I'd be happy to. In terms of mitigation and our respective natural resources, I know you've heard from my colleague, Mark McLaughlin, previously to approve the procurement of 500 acres of habitat at the Lazy K Ranch. This is habitat that's connected to other habitat areas and other conservation areas, which is a deliberate approach that the authority is taking in terms of natural resources mitigation. This is looking at resource mitigation from the regional scale rather than from a piecemeal perspective. By taking this regional scale approach and process and consulting and engaging with local experts as to determine regionally significant contributions to fulfill mitigation, we're taking that much more robust approach to mitigation than a piecemeal approach. You've also heard from my colleague, Melissa Dumont, the Director of Planning and Integration, on the investments we're making already in our station communities and the work that we're engaged with our partners to determine and develop a set of investments at each station based on the principles of good access, operational efficiency, and setting a high bar on development potential at and around the station. So even if you never ride the train, these investments will transform these cities, enriching the urban districts with walkable, bikeable, transit-rich networks that benefit every community member through access to destinations and mobility and economic development opportunities, again, even if you never take the train. However, we do, of course, build these stations with the object of achieving really excellent ridership. And we've provided planning funding to these communities that enables those cities to incorporate the station into their land use scenarios and leverage this major public investment to achieve the infill development with affordable housing and compact walkable streets and a mix of uses that brings riders to our system and reduces pressure on development elsewhere. We've also heard a lot today about jobs and jobs training. That's a very strong need in the Central Valley and elsewhere in California. And the small business team and Title VI teams are, of course, hard at work engaging with hundreds and thousands of community members, providing information on how to participate in the system and how to access jobs training and workforce development opportunities associated with the system. So the action today is to adopt a revised sustainability policy, which we've revised to identify material sustainability and other actions in response to stakeholder feedback we received when we did a materiality assessment, as well as feedback, board member direction, executive orders, and recent regulation. Some of those policy updates, as I mentioned, include having zero net scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions and criteria pollutant emissions from construction, extending the use of environmental products declarations. We already require these in CP4, and taking this step is actually quite significant for the industry. There's no other infrastructure project that's required this, but by requiring this, we're revealing information about the materials we have already in use on the project and can move to improve on those materials choices. The policy also commemorates the 100% renewable energy for operations goal. It incorporates some of the scenarios and analysis done to date on climate risk and assessing how various climate scenarios, what that relationship is to the rail infrastructure and how to mitigate that risk. It also looks at our energy net positive design criteria and the requirements for LEED Platinum facilities, as well as our reinforcement of water conservation and efficiency elements. And finally, across the program, we're focusing efforts on identifying meaningful community needs that can be addressed through our programs and approaches. As you'll hear more about in our presentation on greenhouse gas emissions, we're looking not just at programs such as those that CAL FIRE, where we can deliver sequestration through tree planting, but other community benefits and addressing community needs that achieve greenhouse gas emissions reductions. I'd like to take any further questions you have.
All right. I'll have one comment, but let me just go down the list. Director Schenk.
Thank you. Thanks, Margaret. I'd like to go back to the station communities.
Yes.
Working with our partners. So over 35 years, many of us have had the opportunity to see the development around stations in other countries, Japan, Spain, even China. And frankly, it's just a remarkable benefit to the communities that have the stations and right around the stations too. And so my question is, what are some of the lessons learned from these other places that have worked on station communities? What are some of the top 3 positive and the top 3 negative lessons that we have learned from these other places?
Well, I'd say those top 3 lessons are connectivity and multimodal access, making sure that it's a seamless, transparent connection for folks moving from high-speed rail to other transit and first mile, last mile choices. I think we also see that making the station a destination for more than just taking the train means you derive greater activity and benefit from that station investment.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
It means embedding the station with, well, one, making it very transparent for the rider. I think that's a key lesson, right? We want people to easily get to their train and know absolutely where to go and sort of move seamlessly through the station. But we know that this investment in these communities can really be leveraged if we look at other activities at the station, other business opportunities at the station, so that folks could come to shop or to have business meetings and things like that. That's that element.
And that's 2. Okay, I'll give you 2. But how about on the negative?
On the negative side, I think they're twinned, right? We've seen stations which have not necessarily integrated well into the surrounding urban fabric and stand a little bit apart. And so we're working very hard with our local partners to make sure that there's complementary land uses around the station to complement what's happening at the station. So I'd say that. 1 negative. 2, I'd say that again is twinned with the ease of use of the station. You know, I'm sure we've all had experience in rail stations and airports where it's confusing, you don't know where to go, you don't know how to get to your gate or your train, the train platform. And so, you know, we've really taken that on board as a key negative lesson to make sure we address.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions? Okay.
Thank you for such a comprehensive report. I'm very impressed, but I am curious about the energy net positive design. But in all of this, is there an opportunity to produce renewable energy where the train is going?
Yes. I'm sorry we...
Not for our own purposes, but for communities that we serve along the route.
Yes, and I'm sorry that we didn't have you at our January board meeting where we talked about renewable energy in more detail. We're updating the renewable energy policy, but to answer your question, we do work with station communities to specifically explore, ways that excess energy we produce at the station can be used in surrounding development, right? Looking at that much more sort of microgrid or district scale approach. So we're investigating that. Of course, that's a lot of engagement with local partners to make sure that works well. And then in terms of the overall policy, it's 100% renewable energy for the traction power and station functions. Stations, as you know, can tell their own net zero energy story, right? They can be very efficient and produce energy on site. And then elsewhere, we'll look for opportunities to procure renewable energy to feed into the California grid.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know Mr. Curtin was waiting, so let me just go to Director Curtin next.
Yeah, I'm curious about the climate change issues.
Yes.
And what adaptations are you thinking about, or could you give us some examples of what you'd be talking about there? Because particularly in Central Valley, which is really feeling the effects in a variety of ways.
Yes, I think temperature subsidence and, of course, more intense precipitation events are what some of the key concerns in that area. And so we're still at the early stages of assembling meaningful data and understanding that relationship to the proposed alignment. But we would be looking at, the sizing of culverts to make sure they accommodate more intense rain events. The engineering team I know has taken a very deep and detailed look at the subsidence issue and making sure that the infrastructure is able to adjust as that condition adjusts as well. So it would be looking at either design adaptation features, or there's features that really pertain to operations, right? We know an event has a likelihood of happening, and so we want to be able to appreciate that we have what we need in place to be able to address it, either to...
So have you been working with that complex network of water agencies and flood control districts and such to... Hopefully they're working on the same issues?
They are.
I talked to Jeff about this a little bit. It's kind of
Yes. We are engaged with that organization, and I should have mentioned more clearly, we have... California has a unique, very innovative program called the Civic Spark program. So through Civic Spark.
Civic Spark.
So we have a fellow who is with us through October. She is doing this detailed data collection and analysis, and part of the Civic Spark mission is to provide capacity to local jurisdictions. So she'll be engaging with some of the local communities along the alignment to share the data and analysis that she's done to make sure that we're all sort of looking at the same set of information.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mr. Rossi, do you have other questions?
Yeah, mine are much more mundane than my colleagues. As I read this policy, as policies are wont to do, it's not very specific. Fair enough. But let me just read you a couple of things. I don't know what all-encompassing means. I don't understand the authority's priorities and objectives seek to balance social, economic, and environmental issues. Who defines what that is? Who makes the decision that it's balanced? The authority will deliver a sustainable high-speed rail system. By when, and what exactly is that? How do we measure success? Here's one of my favorite ones, being a finance guy. We will achieve a self-sustaining financial structure. I have no idea what that is. we talk about reinforce a clean energy economy through the use of on-site renewable energy systems. What would those be? And how does that, in effect, reinforce a clean energy economy? There's a whole series of these things that I'm sure that you have data for, but I can't understand exactly what they mean without, they're very broad-based statements. And I wouldn't know how to measure them to find out if in fact we were successful. So what I would like, because I don't want to hold you up in getting this approved, but I would like at some point, Mr. Chairman, to get a whole series of definitions as to what this actually means. Another one is a statement here that I can't quite figure out, which is incorporating sustainable design and construction practices as well as renewable energy development and deployment into a project or program from the beginning avoids the historic concern that sustainability requires a higher upfront capital investment than more traditional business as usual practices. On its face doesn't make any sense. The fact that you do something earlier doesn't make it cost less. So I'm trying to understand some of these items as we move through here. And I just want, so as I say, I understand, we're all committed to this exercise, but I would like at some future date, not too far in the future, to get a much clearer understanding of what we're saying we're going to do so we can measure it, so we can tell, the populace that we have in fact done these things. So,
yeah, if I might, I think that if I could recharacterize what you're saying in my words, not trying to put words in your mouth, but
wouldn't be the first time.
No, I think, and I certainly applaud this, which is that and I know the staff has put a lot of work into this, and let me also just stop for a moment and say that one of our newest board members, Lorraine Pasquette, who can't be here today because of a conflicting board obligation, told me that she had detailed discussions with Ms. Cederoth and the staff. Ms. Pasquette, in a prior life, was Assistant General Manager of LADWP with sustainability as her primary responsibility, so she was very interested in this as well. And so I think what I'm hearing from Director Rossi is that we should go beyond simply adopting a far-sighted policy and really make sure as a board that we're looking at how that policy would be effectuated and implemented beyond just words. And I know that in consideration of the next item, Ms. Pasquette had asked the staff to come back with a more fulsome description of the overall program in, I think, 60 days or something like that. And so since that was going to be part of my request for that item, I think in that same time period, if having perhaps some additional conversations with Director Rossi, if we can have further dialogue about how some of these things can be implemented with greater specificity. And I think that actually puts more oomph into the board's determination today about adopting this policy, that we're not just adopting a set of words and stopping there, but really wanting to look at how they are implemented. Mr. Morales?
Yeah, if I could just comment. We have entered into and signed on to sustainability programs administered by national and international organizations, such as the American Public Transportation Association and the UIC. And as part of that, there are reporting protocols for how you can measure sustainability and the progress against them. So that'll be part of the report back to you, is to give you a sense of what those reports look like. I think we're consistent with how we approach other things. We're trying not to, while we're trying to be on the leading edge of what we're doing, we're not trying to create new things where we don't have to. And so we're utilizing existing metrics, accepted standards of how you measure these types of things, so that we can be measured against others as well, not just against our own commitments, but against how others are performing. So we'll include that in the update that we provide.
So you can simply addend that information to the report, makes it easier for the public and for us to act on it.
Right.
I think that's a perfect
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Terrific. Okay.
And if I might, Mr. Chairman, because I had a second question, and I don't know if this is if you're the right individual to ask, but as you look at these items that we say we're committed to doing, that I would wonder if we have budgeted for these kind of things, and where those budgets are and if they're enough. Now, I wasn't at the last board meeting, but clearly we had, well, I shouldn't say clearly, I may say this wrong, and Jeff will correct me. I think it was $12 million for however many trees. Now, we have a plan here for half that amount. And I don't understand, number one, I find 12 million as an abatement budget for a $68 billion project somewhat low, incredulous. But it doesn't mean it isn't right, because you may only be filling a gap depending on what all these other things are. But I think we need to be clear about that, and if 12 was right the last meeting, why is 6 right now? Or is there, as a result of whatever the decision was, we cut the benefits in half, and we're going to get the other half of those benefits when we spend the other half of that money? But I think we need to make that clear before we approve it.
Yeah, and I think that also was part of Director Pasquette's request on the other item, that we move forward with the no regrets strategy on some immediate greenhouse gas reductions as the staff comes back with a broader discussion of the program there. And if I might, Director Rossi, I think I would just suggest that if the staff could just roll that discussion in of the overall budget associated with those policies, that would be great if that's satisfactory.
Yeah, no, works for me.
Yeah,
A few quick comments on that. And we had some of this discussion last month. What Meg reported on were a combination of things that we're doing strictly as a matter of required mitigation through permitting or the regulatory or the environmental approval process. And then other things that we're doing above and beyond what's required as a matter of policy and public good. And some of those have a direct cost attached and some do not. So for instance, the Tier 4 equipment requirement is something we've incorporated into the contracts. So that's then borne by the contractors. Obviously, we see that reflected in the bids, but it's not a discrete cost. There was a meeting yesterday that the White House Council on Environmental Quality held a meeting on mitigation efforts and featured our program as the only project that it featured for what we're doing on mitigation, the types of things that Mark is overseeing, and our regional mitigation program. And that's a $200 million effort, right, initially on that. Gives you a better sense of what we're doing, the scale of what we're doing on a mitigation basis. With the, and we'll talk about this in the trees, when talking about trees. But yeah, you're right. The initial proposal was for 12. That was a calculation made on a direct one-for-one offset of GHG. What we're coming back and proposing is a scaled back but phased approach to doing that. So it does not mean that that's the end of it. It's just at this point, based on discussions with some board members, Ms. Pasquette in particular, she wanted us to take a step approach to implementing that program and see if there are other things we could do in complementing the tree planting. And so that's why we're taking that step.
Exactly.
Just so I understand.
In the mic.
That the 200 million you just mentioned, that's money we will expend?
Yes, and that is budgeted. That's part of, again, that comes out of the environmental approval process and the permitting requirements. So that's shown in the budget, is carried in the budget for each segment. And we can walk through all of that when we come back with the report.
Okay. Other questions? Other members? All right. This is an action item, so.
Need a motion?
Please.
So moved.
Okay. Moved by Director Schenk. Seconded by Director Rossi. Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Schenk?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes?
Director Rossi?
Yes.
Director Correa?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Lowenthal? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you.
Next item, we're just rolling into
We're rolling into,
Let's roll.
Yeah.
I know.
I think we can we may be able to shortcut this discussion.
Quite a bit last time, yeah.
Right.
We
So,
certainly can.
instead of doing the entire presentation, if that's okay, can we just talk about any modification from what was presented last time?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I'm
I'm going to put this up. It sort of frames the discussion for you somewhat. So we were asked to revisit the program and kind of understand, what it covered. And this is a picture of your greenhouse gas emissions boundary for construction. What we talked about in the sustainability presentation are the actions that are, shorter, already undertaken to reduce that budget, and what we're left with are the Scope 1 emissions that we propose to begin offsetting through a tree planting program. This is to cover the existing construction packages 1 through 4. And then we'll investigate other programs that provide community benefits and greenhouse gas reductions.
Good.
My only question was Member Pasquette's, were her concerns addressed to her satisfaction?
Yes, she talked to me about it, and what she said was that she supports this notion of moving forward at this point, and asked that the staff then come back to us with a broader program. So that's fine. And then let me also announce for the record that Vice Chair Richards stepped out because, as he announced last time, he has a commercial relationship with CAL FIRE through a lease agreement, and so he's recusing himself. Okay,
So
other questions? Moved by Director Schenck, second by Director Rossi. Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Schenck?
Yes.
Director Rossi? Yes. Director Correa?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Lowenthal? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Cedar-Roth. Mr. McLaughlin, thank you. I know a lot of work went out to that. Thanks. Okay, next item is the right-of-way acquisition update and progress report, and then we'll just combine that, Mr. Glenn, with item 5, which is the proposal to consider amending the existing contracts for right-of-way services.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Richard, members of the board, CEO Morales. Alan Glenn, the Director of Real Property, here to report on action item or agenda items 4 through 6. So initially, the first area is a right-of-way program update, which is an information item. The slide that's in front of you here is not meant to teach you all the steps of right-of-way, but rather to demonstrate the significant complexities in the process that are required in order to meet multiple state and federal laws. We have also multiple state agencies involved in the process.
This answers Mr. Rossi's question of who's in charge.
Right. The agencies include Department of General Services, Department of Finance, Public Works Board, and we have Caltrans Legal Support providing eminent domain processing. The important thing, though, is that the process is well defined. The circles on the graph represent 40 different locations.
That might be the understatement of the year, Mr. Glenn.
That we track dates in order to manage the overall flow of the parcels through the process. This also allows us to provide reporting to management as well as to the board. This slide...
By the way, did John Tapping design that?
What's that?
Did John Tapping design that for you?
Yes, yeah, he knows it inside and out. This slide demonstrates the nearly 1,500 parcels that are required to deliver CPs 1 through 4. Over time, the number of parcels has continued to increase due to design refinements, alternative technical concepts, which are sometimes referred to as ATCs. These ATCs are proposed by the design builder as part of their proposal, and it's a modification to the proposed design, which is functionally equivalent, however, often results in overall cost savings to the project. The ATCs do sometimes require changes to the right-of-way, but that shouldn't imply that the changes are always increasing the right-of-way. In fact, many of the ATCs actually reduce the overall right-of-way, but regardless, any change plus or minus to the planned right-of-way does increase the additional support services needed to deliver those parcels. And we do expect in the coming weeks to receive some additional parcels coming from the CP 2-3 team, so we will have more than 1,500 parcels in the program. This slide indicates the significant progress that we've made over the last year. In 2014, we had delivery of just 95 parcels total, and with many process improvements that we've implemented during calendar year 2015, we increased the delivery to 457 parcels during the calendar year. So the combined total at the end of 2015 was 552 parcels. As of March 4th, the current number sits at 624 parcels. This delivery pace, as you've seen in recent months, continues to improve, and we would expect that we can sustain that delivery pace in 2016 and beyond. The following two slides are progress graphs that are utilized by the Finance and Audit Committee to report out on the progress for construction packages 1 and construction package 2-3. Just as a quick orientation, the light green line is the original contract addendum 9 planned acquisition plan graph. The dark blue line is a rebaselining that occurred in December of 2014. That line continues to be modified in order to reflect the additional parcels that come into the program. The mustard line is the actual delivery graph to date. So through January 31st, we had 428 parcels. And then the dash green line that extends from that is the forecast that we anticipate from the consultants as they update the program weekly. So you can see early on in comparing the green line and the mustard color line, we had a very late start. This is due to a variety of reasons. We've made a lot of adjustments in the program, and you can see that the slope of the line has improved drastically, and we expect to catch the original plan by the middle of 2016. In CP23, we had the good fortune to get out ahead of it a little bit. You can see that we actually were delivering parcels well before the planned acquisition line, which is represented in the dark blue. But the planned acquisition line was really shown to be far too aggressive and too steep in terms of the delivery rate. And so we have crossed under and are slightly trailing behind in terms of the total number of parcels. The good news, however, though, in CP23, we have delivered most of the parcels needed in the northern 10 miles of the project that will enable 8 bridges to go to construction in calendar year 2016. We continue to partner closely with the design builders for both CP1 as well as CP23 to identify those critical parcels needed to not only initiate construction at multiple locations, but also to continue to sustain it once they get started. We will be adding a similar graph for CP4 in the coming months. So a little bit about the lessons learned. We must learn from our past mistakes that occurred in CP1 and make sure that we never repeat them. Keep in mind that we're a new state agency. We had to develop policies and procedures. We had to develop a tracking and management tool system, and we had to develop those new relationships with other state agencies to effectively deliver the overall parcels. We had to hire consultants. We had to train and develop them to represent the authority the way we want them to operate, and we listened to our customers and stakeholders to adapt and improve overall, and we continue to do that today. While most of the growing pains are behind us, we must continuously look for process improvements and eliminate the bottlenecks that slow delivery. We have to anticipate the adequate resources that align with upcoming workload and anticipate when adjustments are needed. We're doing all this now, and the results have, as I've indicated, have improved. Looking at some of the future segments beyond CP 1 through 4, there's some improvements that I believe we should look at seriously. Right-of-way staff is getting involved in many of the upcoming environmental documents to assist with those teams in the alignment studies so that we minimize the number of complex acquisitions that would be required, as those tend to drive the overall delivery schedule. We also would like to clear a slightly wider footprint because, as we've seen in the initial CP 1 through 4, as design builders come in and recommend slightly modified designs, it does sometimes require us to go back to some of the property owners and acquire very narrow slivers in order to accommodate those new designs. As the board considers and adopts preferred alternatives, we would also like to initiate the appraisal mapping, get the appraisals well underway and nearly complete, so that at the time of environmental certification, we'll be ready to begin first written offers with the property owners. We will continue to increase the partnering efforts, as has been discussed on the other slides. So with that, that concludes the informational part of the presentation, and if there's any questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Glenn. Well, thank you for your hard work on this. This has been a very tough assignment, and by all accounts, you've been very productive and very good at this, so thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, are there questions for Mr. Glenn? Ms. Lowenthal.
Where do we stand with the railroads in terms of right-of-way?
We have a number of railroad agreements that have been put in place. They have a variety of titles. We have an EAA with UPRR that is mainly up and down the rail corridor. That did allow us to transfer 10 parcels to CP1 Design Builder in 2015. We do have other agreements that are for the overcrossings within CP1 with UPRR. In order to transfer those rights and give the ability for the design builder to construct, they have to complete what is referred to as a construction and maintenance agreement. And so that onus is on the design builder in order to complete that process. So we're working through a similar process now with UPR in other parts of the project, and we were also negotiating with BNSF in terms of laying out their agreements as well. Frank Vaca, our chief program or project manager, is the one responsible for those negotiations.
Okay. Ms. Schenk.
Yeah, Alan, thank you for the telephonic briefing. That was very helpful.
You're welcome.
And appreciated the time. And this really applies to 5 and 6 as well. So just sort of shortcut it. We heard from members of the public in the past about right-of-way agents not treating members of the public with respect and dignity, and all of us were troubled by that. I see that you've touched on training, and I want to make sure that we have a way of getting feedback from members of the public. As I had suggested, maybe we hand out a "How am I driving" card to people who are being talked to by agents or contacted by agents, so that we can get feedback on how they're being treated.
Yes, I think your suggestion is spot on. We should put out some sort of customer survey in terms of the process and how they believe that they've been handled. We do occasionally get some sort of feedback, either through a letter or a phone call, and we take all of those. If they're complaints, we take them very seriously. If they're compliments, we receive them well as well. But I have, since I've been on board, I have had 4 occasions where an agent wasn't representing us the way we intended for them to be representing us, so we have removed them from the project, or in a couple of cases we've worked with them to change their approach and allowed them to continue, but we monitor that very closely.
You send them to a North Korean re-education camp, or what do we do?
Well, in a couple of cases, we actually had to remove them from the job. So.
My colleagues are embarrassed by me, so that's not the first time.
But not surprised.
But not surprised. Other questions for Mr. Glenn at this point? Okay, why don't we roll into the next two items?
Yes. Agenda item 5 is to consider amending the existing contracts for right-of-way engineering and surveying support services. So these are surveying types of contracts. The board did authorize in 2014, $16 million for right-of-way engineering contracts. We initially hired 5 firms at $3.2 million each. One of those 5 firms did terminate their contract with mutual consent, so we have just 4 current contracts remaining. Those 4 current contracts are set to expire in 2018. The scope of work for these contracts covers surveying work needed to define the parcels, including boundary work, legal descriptions, title research, and associated condemnation support. The proposal before you today is requesting authority to augment those current 4 contracts by a total of $10 million. No one firm would receive more than $3.5 million of the additional work. We're also requesting a time extension of the contract term by 2 years to take it to 2020. These contracts would remain focused on completing the CP 1 through 4 project work. A separate RFQ would be issued under our delegated authority for the extensions to Bakersfield to the south and up to Merced to the north. And that contract would also support limited early acquisition parcels that might be identified, such as hardships or other opportunities to acquire parcels before they develop and increase the overall cost to the authority.
Questions on this?
Sorry.
You have questions?
I got to keep going. Huh? The additional capacity is needed to handle the new work associated with design refinements, ATCs, condemnation support that was not anticipated in the previous procurement. The time extension is needed to complete the scope of work envisioned. And the large advantage of extending these contracts is to maintain the momentum of delivery, retain the institutional memory, benefit from utilizing the consultants that already know our standards and can deliver more efficiently. Each contract would require an amendment to incorporate the new terms, and then as the work is identified, it would be assigned via task orders. The last slide related to this item is just a summary slide that shows the remaining capacity, the requested addendum, and I'll leave it at that. So, any questions?
Could you go back to that last slide one more time, Alan?
Sure.
Tom, did you have a question? Did you have a question, or you just wanted to see the slide again?
No, I just wanted to see the slide.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now, are there questions on this?
Yeah, I have a question. You go ahead.
Just a couple of questions, Alan. Can you just go over where the estimate came from for the $10 million? How did you arrive at the $10 million number as being adequate?
Okay. So for both action item 5 as well as 6, we did compare the original scope of work that was included in past authorities. And we've, as I indicated in the earlier presentation, we've increased the number of parcels from approximately 1,000 parcels for CP 1 through 4 by another 500 to date. In addition, there's another 420 parcels or so between the southern extension down to Bakersfield as well as the northern extension up to Merced, not including the Y. And so as we looked at that number of parcels and the work that remains to be completed, we came up with an overall comprehensive analysis to justify the expenditures.
Okay. Jeff, how's this being treated in the budget, and are we What's the threshold? This is an extension as opposed to a new procurement, I understand. So what's the threshold there? Are we on firm ground with regards to doing this?
Yes, we are. And the reason we're coming to the board is it exceeds the delegated authority. Otherwise, we
Up
could
to
do this
5?
under delegation, and so we're coming to the board because of that.
Okay.
But council has reviewed and confirmed that this is appropriate to proceed this way. And on the budgeting issue, Alan can speak in more detail.
Yes,
It's within the overall right-of-way budget.
Right.
We
are
for the valley.
Right. We are able to fit this within our current overall approximately $800 million budget for right-of-way.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tom covered two of mine, so I just have one. When you look at how you're going to allocate the new dollars, Alan, have you got have you ranked these players? Is it all going to be, I mean, you said no one will get more than 3. Wouldn't we want to give the most money to the people who perform the best?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of who has the best performance records as well as the overall capacity. Some of the teams are a little smaller than the other teams, and who has current work assignments that might influence their ability to take on additional work assignments.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Without objection, I think we'll just have Mr. Glenn present the next item, and then we can just have a single vote on both of them, because I can't imagine that people would want to vote differently on them. But as long, hearing none, we'll proceed that way.
Okay. So agenda item 6.
I'm sorry, hold on.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
They're separate resolutions.
Okay. Well, I did hear an objection, and it came from our general counsel. So given that, I overrule myself on that ruling from the chair, and see if we have a...
So moved. Second. Not that you're overruled, so moved for Alan's request.
Okay. So it was moved by Mr. Rossi. It was seconded somewhere. I didn't hear. By Director Correa. Will the secretary please call the roll?
So this is on item 5.
This is on item 5. Okay.
Director Schenk?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Rossi?
Yes.
Director Correa?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Lowenthal? Chair Richard?
Yes. I just want the record to show that our general counsel actually requires us to follow procedures, which is, I think, a good thing. So, okay.
Good.
Let's move on to the next item. Mr. Glenn.
Okay, agenda item 6 is to consider releasing a request for proposals for additional right-of-way services. And it's important to note that these services are completely different than the previous action item, as these services relate to appraisal and acquisition services as opposed to the surveying services mentioned before. This RFP would anticipate awarding to multiple firms for a total authorized amount not to exceed $44 million. Because of the lengthy procurement process and the anticipated workload coming in the near term, this proposal also requests authority to move up to $10 million of the total $44 million request to augment the current 7 2014 contracts that are on board for similar services. The proposed contracts would be for 5-year terms, and the scope of work includes hazardous material testing, appraisals, acquisition services, relocation assistance for residential and businesses that may be displaced, and other services that may be needed to fulfill the delivery of right-of-way. These contracts are needed to handle the additional workload associated with the design refinements, ATCs, and condemnation support. As indicated in the earlier presentations, the parcel count has grown significantly. These contracts will also cover the geographic limits of CP 1 through 4 plus extensions to Merced and Bakersfield, which were also identified in the 2014 procurement. However, the proposed alignment to Bakersfield is anticipated to be revised with the upcoming environmental update. There are more than 500 additional parcels that were identified in 2014 and the additional 420 for these extensions. So this slide summarizes the previous two procurements. There are 4 2011 contracts remaining with a capacity of about $4 million remaining. These contracts expire June 30th of this year, and we may not be able to fully utilize the capacity in those contracts. There are 7 remaining 2014 contracts. We did start with 8, but one of the firms terminated their contract and ceased operations in California. The total capacity remaining in these contracts is about $10 million, and they are due to expire in 2018. This requested authority would add multiple contracts totaling $44 million. And again, if needed, up to 10 of that 44 would be used to augment the 2014 contracts. So are there any questions?
Questions for Mr. Glenn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, again, the same, so this is all within the budget for right-of-way.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I've thought about, Jeff, I'm just wondering, when we look at all these action items, one thing that would seem to me that may be beneficial for us is, because a budget always comes into mind, is just to just have a small section in each presentation that identifies the implications on budget.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I guess I would just add to that it might be efficient to just in the transmittal have a sign-off from whoever is responsible for that, whether it's Mr. Fong or whatever, and if there's legal issues, a sign-off from Mr. Felenz. That way, when the packages get here, we know they've been through that process, and we can go forward.
We don't need to ask the question, and it also provides clarity for the public.
Yeah, let me, absolutely. I think you'll see in this memo on page 2, there is a sentence that speaks to that, but it's kind of buried in there. So I think, right, we'll work on a format that pulls it out very explicitly and provides for the sort of sign-off.
Thanks, Jim.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, Director Rossi.
Same question. As you look at these in our existing contractees, we make decisions predicated on performance as well?
Yes. Similar to the previous response, it'll be a combination of performance, which is considered as part of the scoring in the RFP process, as well as their capacity in terms of number of agents that are available to the project and their current workload.
And and second question, Alan, is when you look at this and you get this additional staffing, that will lead to ensuring, hopefully, I mean, no one controls 100% of anything here, but ensuring that we will continue to get the right aggregation of parcels in order to not forestall when any of the construction that's taking place up and down the line.
Yeah, that's correct. While we manage the overall delivery of all the parcels by construction package, we also have a separate management strategy focused around the critical parcels needed to not only start construction, but then also sustain construction once it's started. And so we're meeting with each of the construction teams weekly to discuss those critical parcels in terms of the progress. And as we pick those off of the critical list, then we ask them for the next set of critical parcels that are needed to continue and sustain that construction.
Thank you.
Director Curtin.
Just a sort of a brief comment and maybe a question, I'm not quite sure. Part of the additional effort that you need to make has to do with the alternative technical concepts, which is also part and parcel of bringing the cost down.
Correct.
So while we look at these independently, it's always disturbing to see added cost to anything that we're doing, but if the added cost actually adds up to be reduced costs, we might, I don't know if you can actually put that sort of analysis in there, but it certainly helps for me to be happy with the changes, to know that they're part and parcel of bringing down the overall costs. And the idea of getting these things done as expeditiously as possible is becoming more and more critical, especially on CP 1, 2, 3, and 4. because of some of our other timelines that we have to meet. So while it may look like we're actually moving up in our budget, we hopefully will be bringing our overall costs down and meeting other goals that we have to meet under a pretty strict timeline. So in the presentation, I just don't get the sense of all that, but I kind of get it, you know.
Yeah, I did try to highlight that some of the ATCs, while some do add some parcel requirements, a lot of them actually reduce the amount of right-of-way. We had a partnering meeting with CP4, and they were reporting an overall savings of nearly 300 acres of right-of-way.
Well, that's just even within the right-of-way concept, but in the construction cost concept, it could be more dramatic. I mean, they're not doing the ATCs because somebody had a bright idea. They're doing them because it's bringing down the costs in terms of the efficiency of the construction.
And I haven't been directly involved in the analysis of those overall approvals of the ATCs, but it's my understanding that they do consider right-of-way in that overall cost, and so they're looking at the total sum aggregate of the costs and the benefits associated with it.
So I don't think it was a question. It was just more
Okay.
Okay, well, before we vote, I'll just have one observation, which I don't know makes sense or not, but, you know, we get so involved in the details of this program and the complexity and all the pieces, but every once in a while, you know, you stand back and try to look at the scope of it, and, you know, people are sort of amazed that a program can cost $64 billion, and then you realize that we're spending $121 million on right-of-way services, not on the acquisition of the parcels, which is another huge chunk of money, but on being able to go out and manage this process for the 700 or some parcels that we're talking about. And it gives you a sense of just the complexity and the scale of what it takes to do something like this, just to reach out to people, inform them of their rights, walk them through the process, do all this so that we can end up writing them a check, which is a total separate amount from this. And it really is an enormous enterprise, and that's just for the first 100 miles of a 500-mile system. So I just, as I looked at that number, I kind of reflected on the scale of what we're doing here and the cost and how difficult it is. So again, thank you, Mr. Glenn, for your work. I'll take a motion.
I'll move.
Okay, moved by Vice Chair Richards and seconded by both Ms. Lowenthal and Mr. Curtin. So, Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Schenk?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Rossi?
Yes.
Director Correa?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Lowenthal? Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, next item is a contract authorizing, to consider authorization of an extension of the design-build contract for construction package 1. Mr. Jarvis, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Barely.
Chairman Richards, members of the board, CEO Morales. Yes, I'm Scott Jarvis, Chief Engineer for the Authority. And this is an action item. It's item number 7 on your agenda, which is a request for authorization to negotiate and execute a change order to extend the northern terminus of Construction Package 1, or CP1. So CP1 is the first 29 miles of the first construction segment, FCS, of the high-speed rail system, and the contract was executed in August of 2013, and construction is currently underway on that contract. The current CP1 northern limit would be extended from south of Avenue 17 in Madera County, northward approximately 2.7 miles to near Avenue 19 in order to advance construction through the Central Valley. The northern extension will better ensure the authority's compliance with the terms of the federal grant agreement, including the expenditure of ARA funds. The northern extension also advances the work on an environmentally cleared section and provides the capability of a more logical connection and transfer point near an existing Amtrak station. The proposed extension lies within both of the initial operating segments identified previously by the board, Merced to San Fernando Valley, iOS South, and Bakersfield to San Jose, iOS North. This extension northward is eligible to be added to CP1 through a change order, as the design and construction work is consistent with the nature of TPZP's current scope of work. Additionally, there is an efficiency in adding this work to the existing contract where similar construction is currently underway. The scope of work includes civil infrastructure of additional guideway, structures, roadway, and drainage. TPZP submitted preliminary cost proposals for the design and construction of the northern extension, and the authority engaged an independent estimator for comparison and evaluation of the cost proposals. The design and construction estimated costs for this extension are design $16.2 million and construction $138 million, for a total estimated cost of $154.2 million. The design scope of work includes geotechnical engineering services, surveying and mapping, and all design activities. The construction scope of work includes the civil work necessary to complete the infrastructure, including significant earthwork and structures work, with 3 major overcrossing structures. An 18-month construction duration has been proposed by TPZP for this additional work. This change is anticipated to predominantly be concurrent with existing CP1 work and therefore should not significantly affect the overall construction schedule. To avoid TPZP including significant contingencies in its cost estimate, the authority is electing to pay for third-party utility work and hazardous material surveys and remediation using a provisional sum. Additional investigation on impacted utilities will be performed during the design and preliminary construction stages, so the cost of third-party utility work can be more accurately estimated. Staff will also develop a contingency amount for risks borne by the authority. After conducting these analyses, staff will likely return to the board at a later date to seek further approval of a provisional sum and a contingency amount for this work. The authority now seeks the board's approval to negotiate and execute a change order for a northern extension to the design build services contract for CP1 in an amount not to exceed $154.2 million. I would now be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So before I turn to my colleagues, it was raised before, can you just confirm for us that this change order will also have within it the adoption or the implementation of the authority's goals on small business participation and disabled veteran business participation?
Yes, I can confirm that. Those provisions of the contract are not changed as part of this change order.
All right.
So, yes.
Okay. I'll have a comment in a moment, but are there questions from members? Director Rossi, microphone.
Yes. As you look at page 3, the contingency paragraph which you just discussed,
Yes.
I have been informed that you don't have a contingency allocation for each mile of track. So I'm not going to ask you that. But what I am asking is that we would assume that, I mean, given what you just said, it sounds like we're going to create this contingency as a result of all this additional work. The fact of the matter is, it's already in the budget. There is a contingency, and that's a contingency we're going to allocate.
That is correct.
Okay.
We're going to do an analysis on this 2.72 miles of design
sure we
and
get the
construction
allocation
work.
right.
We can pull that out of the
Right.
existing unallocated contingency and allocate it to this
Right.
project.
So there's not a real budget issue here, other than understanding how you pull forward
Correct.
the appropriate allocation.
Yes.
Right. In other words, that would have been associated with this segment of track in some other segment of the project. We need to pull it out of that and assign it to this segment of track.
That's correct.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I
Mr.
didn't
Ross.
recognize you, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. But you were looking at me.
Well, I was kind of
So-
looking at Ms. Lowenthal, but that's all right.
I'm sorry, please, Bonnie, no, go ahead, no.
Come on.
I'm
Vice
not-
Chair Richards.
I'm not going to do it. So Mike just asked the first question. The second one, with regards to the estimate, is it normal then, Scott, that we would, in using an independent estimator, which I applauded, do you generally then have somebody check that estimate? Is there somebody that just confirms that the estimator didn't miss anything?
No, it was checked. The estimator was actually contracted by our project and construction management team, and that independent estimator did the work, and then it was reviewed by the PCM itself.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Okay.
I'm done.
Any others? I just want to make sure. Other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Curtin.
So, and the independent estimates or the estimates that we've had in the past have been considerably higher than the bids that have come in. Is this estimate that we've put out, is it in sync with the sort of the cost of the, I don't want to say per mile cost because there could be other added issues, but is it in the same percentages, let's say, that the original bid was dealt with? So our original estimate was a bit higher than the bid that came in, and I think we've all been happy about that. So how do we know we're not sort of falling prey to the same problem if we don't have any sort of competitive issue here? Do you understand my question?
Yes, I do. The independent estimate took into consideration the specific scope of this work, and so we really couldn't apply like a per mile basis.
I get that.
Yeah, because this, even though it's 2.7 miles, there's 3 major overcrossings as part of this. There's also another bridge over a creek, Schmidt Creek. So the independent estimate took that scope of work into consideration, pulled out those specific structures, the guideway necessary, and so forth. So we feel like we were able to have a very strong verification of the contractor's proposed price based upon the specific scope of work of this segment.
A contractor's proposed price as well as our estimates kind of work together?
Yes, we use the independent estimate to compare the contractor's proposed price.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say that I really like this initiative on the part of the staff and the organization. To me, it's creative and good. We take advantage of the fact that the contractor's already mobilized, working in this area, so we avoid the mobilization costs.
Correct.
We take advantage of the fact that we already have cleared environmentally up to this limit. We take advantage of the fact that by going up this 2.5 miles, we can be prepared, if necessary or desirable, to connect to existing rail service in Madera. And we take advantage of the fact that this is something that we can do now, which further draws on the ARA funds, where I think it's fair to say that we know there's a deadline. We're on track to spend all the money by that deadline, but it's always nice to have more cushion in case we get rains or earthquakes or things that disrupt the construction area. And this is also entirely consistent with the purposes of the Stimulus Act, because we're creating that many more jobs and putting that many more people to work, building part of our system. And as you pointed out, this really has nothing to do with where we go next. It's all part of the original first construction segment in the Central Valley. So I think it's a good opportunity to take advantage of all those things, and it's a good initiative. I certainly support it. So I wanted to thank you for you guys digging into this and making it work.
You're welcome.
Okay, could we have a motion? Okay, it was moved by Director Curtin and seconded by Vice Chair Richards. Please call the roll.
Director Schenk?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards? Yes. Director Rossi? Yes. Director Correa?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Director Lowenthal? Yes. Chair Richard?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Okay, we will next have a presentation by our CEO, Mr. Morales, on the 2016 business plan. We are now, excuse me, let me correct myself, on the 2016 draft business plan, and I was about to make the point that this was released by the authority as a draft for public comment and review. And as part of that, these meetings will also be an opportunity, among others, for the public to comment. And as Mr. Morales is taking the lectern, let me also point out that For those who are following our proceedings electronically, we invite and encourage comments on the draft business plan. You can find it on our website. You can also find the instructions on how to comment. Certainly, you can come before us here. You can send letters. You can post comments, et cetera. So all of those will be considered and reviewed and contemplated before the board considers adopting the final. So with that, Mr. Morales.
With that, you just gave half of my presentation.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
We can shortcut this a little bit.
No, I didn't mean to do that.
That's all right.
Ad-libbing.
So this is an information item both for the board and the public about the release of the draft business plan, which is required under law to be submitted every 2 years and updates all of the major forecasts and cost estimates and other elements of what the program is. As you noted, it was released on February 18th. We're in a 60-day comment period running through April 18th, and have scheduled a board meeting at the end of April to consider any changes and adopt a final plan in order to submit it to the legislature on schedule. Probably the most significant thing about this draft business plan is that for the first time, within available existing resources, we can actually project out to delivering an operating system. That's a major step forward, and that's largely due to the tool that the governor and the legislature provided through the commitment on an ongoing basis of cap and trade funds. That's the game changer in terms of delivering the program. In delivering it, and what this plan includes really is the three-legged stool in terms of how we move forward, and those being, one, to get into service as soon as possible. And then for several reasons. One, it's to let people experience and have the benefit of riding the system, to start seeing the GHG benefits of getting people out of cars and airplanes and onto non-polluting trains, and very significantly to unleash private sector participation due to the revenue generation. At the same time, very importantly, we are committed to making concurrent investments throughout the system. That's to spread the benefits, to provide local enhancements in advance of our system being ultimately delivered, and it makes linking the system up simpler as we go forward. And then third, to continue to advance all of the segments through the environmental approvals so that we can move forward and take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. Using those criteria, we apply that. I'll first note that the plan does result in, or does show, a decrease in the total capital cost. That's largely due to the lessons learned through the first contracts and related value engineering efforts to look at how we can deliver this program more effectively. Applying the three legs of the stool, what we propose in this draft is to initiate operations first in the north from the terminus of where our construction project is happening in the Central Valley up to San Jose. At the same time, making investments, and we've identified a total of $4 billion worth of investments that we intend to move forward with in conjunction with our regional partners to improve that corridor and prepare it for high-speed rail, but deliver interim benefits to local commuter rail. Also to Amtrak, that is on the second busiest Amtrak corridor in the country. And third, and to conclude all of the environmental, we do want, obviously we're talking about initial operations. That's just the first place that the models show us that we can run the system and meet all of the various requirements. Obviously we want to continue to extend the system, and we've identified the initial extensions from that operating segment to get into downtown Bakersfield and to San Francisco. And we are noting in the plan that we think it's time for the federal government to get back engaged in the program, and we'll be looking for opportunities as we go forward. But I do want to point out that the plan that we have laid out here in draft in terms of getting into operation and making these other investments does not depend on new federal money. We're looking at that down the road. We heard some discussion during public comment about connecting the Central Valley to Silicon Valley, and that's really what's so significant about the initial operating segment, is it is a game changer for that region, tying together the Central Valley for the first time with Silicon Valley. Takes 3.5 hours to drive from Fresno to San Jose to the Bay Area today. That'll be 45 minutes or so on the train. That's just a whole different way of connecting, and it opens up all sorts of opportunities. And that's what we're laying out in this program, and then expanding it as we go forward to tie in and expand the benefits to the key cities throughout. In Southern California, very heavily used rail corridor between Burbank and Anaheim, a key corridor for us. It goes through Los Angeles Union Station. This board recently approved an agreement with LA Metro to help to partner in the station and invest in that. We'll be expanding on those investments through specific funding of projects in that corridor that have distinct independent value and independent utility, and ultimately tie together to ultimately let us operate our system there. As the chairman noted, we are in the public comment period. To date, we have received over 40 comments. In the future board meetings, we will be presenting a summary of those comments for the public. The board members will receive all the comments to look at as we go through the process. There are a variety of ways that the public can make comment, and they're contained here. All of that is accessible through the website. And as was noted earlier, we will have future meetings in April 12th in Anaheim to take public comment there, and then April 21st in San Jose to consider the plan, take comment, and act on it there. And with that, that's the summary. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, CEO Morales. Any questions for Jeff or comments?
Well,
Yes, Director Curtin.
No, you go ahead.
No,
I'm
Please.
sorry.
I don't really have a question. I want to make
I don't either.
Okay, well, we'll make our speeches then. You know, I'm very excited about the new development because for me, and I've only been on here about 6 months, this is the first time that you, at least I believe, you can really see the value of the connectivity that we keep talking about. Aside from all the details that we have to argue over on a regular basis, there's two elements to this that are critical. I think the enhancements in Southern California are clearly identifiable in a commuter sense. But the connection from San Jose to Fresno, Bakersfield, and we've had many people from the Valley here today, it changes very, very dramatically the potential economics. And I do remember from my own experiences sort of having an awakening. When you connect those centers, the idea of commuting from Fresno to San Jose is really quite easy to conceive of. And the dynamics of living in Fresno versus I mean, we all see the economic pressures that are being put on the Bay Area by Silicon Valley. This is a whole change in how that can be approached that really is, to me, the sort of the first signal of what high-speed rail will do for California. And the more people talk about it, the more they understand it. And I know the people in the Valley kind of get it because, as you've heard, we're in the middle of nowhere to get from one place to the other, and people sort of feel left out. But this will change things dramatically, and I'm really kind of thrilled about the ideas that are being presented here. And particularly also the idea of not leaving Southern California. I mean, the first impression from the press was, oh my goodness, they're changing direction. I know there was one article that I got a big kick out of, which was very consistently negative on high-speed rail, but then when the direction was changed, the article sort of said, well, oh my God, all the benefits of high-speed rail are moving north now. You know, so the discussion has changed dramatically, and I really want to thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Director Schenck.
Well, Jeff, I just to take the moment here. I mean, I also applaud the work that has gone into it and the refinement. People here earlier from Madeira were talking about high-speed rail, that the birthplace of high-speed rail is Madeira. Not so. The birthplace of high-speed rail and the idea was San Diego to Los Angeles, then the second busiest Amtrak corridor back in 1981. And so as we now push out further and further, I fear I'm not going to live long enough to see phase two, but I just want to make sure that with all the emphasis on Central Valley, which is important, and the Bay Area, and I agree with everything that Director Curtin said and that others have said, that we not lose momentum to try and accelerate that phase two, the real birthplace of high-speed rail and the real raison d'etre of high-speed rail, and the reason that back in 1981, I, as Secretary of Business and Transportation, and Governor Jerry Brown supported high-speed rail, began to implement it as, we just need to keep that focus even as we move through the business plan as amended now.
Two comments on that. One, we are continuing, and it's clear in this plan, to do the early work, the planning and work for the phase two system to get to San Diego. The other thing that this plan does is builds on the work we've done over the last few years to really look at how we connect into rail overall in the state. And so part of our focus on the Burbank to Anaheim corridor is that corridor continues south then to get to San Diego. That's the Los Angeles corridor. We're working with the State Transportation Agency and the regional partners to look at continuing investments that can be made in that corridor to continue to improve service between LA and San Diego, even in advance of when we ultimately get them to a high-speed rail system. So there's a comprehensive statewide effort to look at connecting those two cities much more efficiently with rail.
No, I understand that, Jeff. What I'm saying is we need to talk about it too, because people in that corridor say, really, why should we be supportive? What's in it about it? We need to at least keep the dream alive, is all I'm saying, by talking about it and writing about it.
Very good. Okay. Sorry to have stepped away. Any other questions or comments at this point? Mr. Morales, let me thank you for the presentation, and let me also just say from the dais here, I think on behalf of all of us, we want to thank the hard work of the men and women of the staff and the RDP and others who put this document together. And I think it's a very exciting time for high-speed rail because we've laid out for the public our recommendation of how we can actually build the system. And what is really here is the sense that we can build this now. We have the available funds, if they're allocated, to build an operating segment, which will kick off everything else, as you pointed out. So it's all good. Anyway, please pass our thanks on to them and the staff. Okay, thank you. With that, we've completed the regular agenda. The board will now enter into closed session in the anteroom off of this auditorium, after which we will come back and report on any actions. The board had met in closed session. We have no items to report out from that closed session. Accordingly, this meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board is concluded. Thank you.